Hello, friends, and let's get started.
Nick sat at the kitchen table, absent-mindedly, stirring the ice in his whiskey glass with a spoon. The house was quiet, only the faint hum of the refrigerator reminding him that he wasn't alone. In the living room, stretched out on the couch, Amanda was lazily flipping through her phone's feed, her face illuminated by the faint bluish light of the screen. She looked relaxed, too relaxed, as if she were alone. The image was painfully familiar to him. She used to be able to snuggle in his arms like this, laughing at some silly video, discussing weekend plans with him. Now she just existed next to him, not bothering to even give him the occasional glance in his direction. Nick shifted his gaze to the glass in his hand, watching the ice cubes collide with each other, crackling. It was their usual Friday night. Amanda had once again chosen the phone screen over him. He tried to fight it before, asking questions, wondering how her day was going, suggesting they watch a movie together. Each time, she'd give a one-word answer, throw in something like later or I'm tired, and he'd back off, try not to turn everything into a pointless argument. Eventually, he stopped asking, and so this evening he just sat there, listening to her fingers running across the screen of her phone, to the way she sighed deeply now and then, as if annoyed by something she'd seen online. And then, without even taking her eyes off the phone, she dropped it. "You should be glad I'm still here at all," said nonchalantly, carelessly, almost lazily, like she was just reminding him to remember to lock the door at night. Nick froze. His fingers gripped the glass tighter, the ice tinkling. She didn't look at him, didn't even think her words might hurt him. Or maybe she didn't think they meant anything at all? He didn't answer right away, just kept looking at her, waiting. Maybe she'd misspoken. Maybe now she'd realize what she'd said and fix the situation. But no. Amanda, still not looking at him, frowned her eyebrows slightly, as if noticing something strange on her phone, and flicked off the notification, completely immersed in her own world. Inside Nick's mind, something clenched. Everything he'd once felt for this woman, love, loyalty, warmth at that moment seemed to recede, revealing something else beneath. He couldn't immediately identify what it was. It wasn't pain, not anger, not even resentment. It was sobering. He slowly set the glass on the table. No sudden movements, no outburst of rage, just a tension that seemed to fill the entire house. His own breathing rumbled in his ears. All the details around her became crystal clear. The light smell of her perfume, the soft light of the desk lamp, the faint crackle of the candle she'd lit on the coffee table. A seemingly ordinary evening. But something inside him had changed. He realized that he didn't feel the usual fear. The same fear that gripped him from the inside every time Amanda was cold, when she left without explanation, when she ignored him, staying in the same house, but as if behind a glass wall. He wasn't afraid of losing her anymore. Because, damn it, he just realized he'd already lost her. Nick slowly stood up, in complete silence, even breathed shallowly, so as not to disturb that oppressive atmosphere. He saw Amanda wiggle her eyebrows, catching the edge of his movement, but even then she didn't bother to raise her head. It was as if she didn't care, like he was such an insignificant part of her life that even the sharp clatter of his chair hitting the floor wouldn't draw attention. Nick looked at her, carefully, studiously, for the last time. She sat with her legs stretched out, her hair carelessly disheveled, a slight look of displeasure on her face, but not because of him. Because of something on her phone. Before, he would have asked what was wrong. Before, he would have tried to make conversation. Before, he would have done anything to get her back to him. But today he did something different. He turned around and walked out of the kitchen, calmly, softly, like he had absolutely everything under control. He walks to the bedroom. Quietly, without fuss. No tension in his steps, as if he just decided to change his clothes or grab something from the closet. He doesn't even cast a glance at Amanda, doesn't make a single movement that might give away his thoughts. But inside he's already got it all molded into a single, extremely clear picture. The late calls, those annoying vibrations of the phone when she thought he was already asleep. Her voice, muffled and disconnected as she retreated to the bathroom or the balcony, closing the door tightly behind her. Sometimes she didn't answer at all, just stared at the screen as if weighing whether to pick up. And then, when the phone stopped shaking in her hand, she'd just tuck it under her pillow or in the drawer of her nightstand. Nick remembers waking up one day in the middle of the night to a slight rustle, the sound of a message flashing on the screen. She quickly grabbed her phone, turned off the screen, and closed her eyes again without even looking at him. He pretended to sleep then. Evenings. He was coming home, and she was about to go out. With the girls, on business, just out for a walk. At first she told more, adding details, as if she were trying to make her words believable. Eventually the explanations disappeared altogether. She just silently took her keys and left. Once he asked where she was going, and without even looking back, she threw it back. What difference does it make? A strange sensation pierced him then. But he didn't insist. He didn't want to make a scene. Like a fool, he'd thought that if he didn't ask questions, if he didn't dig into the details, reality would remain unchanged. Fool. Her indifferent stares. That was the most painful part. Nick could tolerate the late-night calls, the reticence, even her leaving without explanation. But the look, that look that held nothing. No warmth, no love, not even irritation. Just emptiness. She looked through him like through a transparent glass. He noticed it when he talked to her at breakfast, when he tried to make a joke, when he touched her shoulder as he passed by. She didn't care. She didn't care at all. He was there, but at the same time, he didn't exist. And in that moment, he realized the most important thing. She was already gone. She's not going to leave. She's not preparing for it. She's already done it. Just physically still in this house. He opens the closet, looks carefully at the rows of neatly hung clothes. He remembers Amanda removing all of his shirts from the top shelf a year ago, making more room for his stuff. He even smiled then, thought it was something cute. He looks at it all differently now. This isn't their home, not their life together. It's just a place where he was still part of the interior for a while. Nick picks up a suitcase, the same one they once bought together before their trip to Miami. They'd laughed then, choosing the size. Amanda had insisted on a small one. He'd assured her they needed a spacious one so they could take everything. In the end, they'd chosen this one, the medium. Well, now it was just the right size to hold everything she needed. He places it on the bed and opens it up. The metal zippers part quietly to the sides. All his movements are calm, calibrated. Not an ounce of fuss. Not a single unnecessary movement. He even breathes evenly, measuredly, as if he were doing something completely familiar. But something inside him freezes. Not pain. No pain. It has long since been superseded by something else. He hears Amanda downstairs running her finger over the phone screen again. It doesn't even occur to her to go upstairs and ask what he's doing, because she doesn't allow for a second the thought that Nick is capable of anything unexpected. She's sure she knows him better than he knows himself. But she's wrong, and in a few minutes she'll realize it. Nick took his time. His movements were smooth, precise. He opened the suitcase, and the zipper separated with a soft but distinct sound that seemed louder than it should have been. The house was too quiet. Amanda was still sitting downstairs, completely engrossed in her phone. It didn't even occur to her that he was doing anything out of the ordinary. He reached over and pulled one of her dresses off the rack, the same one she'd once worn to his house on dates. Before, if he had touched it, he would have remembered her laughter, her warm touch, the light scent of her perfume. Now there was nothing in it but fabric and other people's memories. He folded it neatly and stowed it in his suitcase. A pair of jeans, a few t-shirts, a light cardigan followed. All of these she'd worn in the last few months when she'd left in the evenings. She hadn't even told him where she was going. He knew those things weren't going back into that closet. He continued folding her clothes in even stacks, taking his time. Each movement was like a ritual, an almost meditative process in which there was no room for emotion. He heard the slight creak of the closet door as it yielded slightly under his hand. There was a faint rustle of fabric as he pulled out another item. No more unnecessary sounds. Just him, the suitcase, and the things that were no longer part of this house. Downstairs, Amanda, oblivious to what was happening, still sat sprawled out on the couch the same way. Her fingers moved habitually across the screen. Her phone vibrated again, and she seemed to sigh irritably, but didn't answer the message. Someone was probably waiting for her to respond. But it was up to her to decide when and to whom to respond. She was used to everything in her life being structured in a way that suited her. But the sound that came from above snapped her out of that state. It was no ordinary noise. Not the sound of the television, not footsteps, not creaking furniture. It was something else. She slowly raised her head. Froze. Somewhere upstairs, something was happening. For a second, she just listened. Then she put the phone down on the armrest of the couch, turned slowly toward the stairs. A few more seconds. Then stood up. A step. One more. She headed upstairs. Amanda stopped in the bedroom doorway, and for a second it seemed like the air in the room froze with her. She stood straight, one foot slightly forward, as if she were about to take a step, but suddenly changed her mind. Her eyes widened, but her face remained blank, almost icy. She didn't speak right away. First, she looked at the suitcase open on the bed, then at the things neatly folded in it. For a few seconds, her gaze darted between them and Nick, as if she were trying to figure out if she was really seeing what she was seeing. "What are you doing?" Her voice was flat, unemotional, but with a distinct note of irritation. Nick didn't answer immediately. He slowly, almost defiantly, took her favorite black dress off the rack. The thin fabric slid softly over his hands as he folded it neatly and placed it on top of her suitcase. He could feel her gaze. He knew that at this moment she was sizing him up, weighing him, calculating. But he gave her nothing. No fuss, no flash of emotion, no desire to justify himself. Amanda frowns. There's not just irritation in her voice now, but something else. Not alarm yet, but already displeasure. "Are you serious?" Nick slowly lifts his head. His eyes meet hers. "You said I should be glad you're still here." His voice sounds steady, calm. "I'm just making it easier for you." She blinks. Just a little bit. Almost imperceptible. But it's enough. The crack. Her confidence, her usual sense of control over the situation had all faltered for the first time. He saw her lips tense, her hands clench into fists, but quickly unclench, trying to maintain her usual mask of indifference. She needed time to process what had just happened. There was a quick calculation going on in her head. He was sure. Is he joking? Is this an attempt at manipulation? Or is he really... Her eyebrows twitched slightly as that last thought seemed to latch somewhere deep inside. He looked at her silently. She at him. And then, for the first time in a long time, she really didn't know what to say. Amanda frowns, but immediately forces herself to relax. She takes a step forward, as if intending to grab her dress or unzip her suitcase, but stops at the last moment. Her eyes are slightly squinted, her chin slightly lifted. The familiar confidence is still there, albeit by the thinnest of threads. She quickly assesses the situation, and then does what she's always done best, choosing offense over defense. She smirks and crosses her arms over her chest. "You really think you can kick me out? Just like that?" Her voice is light, almost mocking, but there's tension behind it. Nick hears it as clearly as the angry tapping of her fingernail on his elbow. She wants him to snap, to yell, for them to devolve into the familiar scenario of arguments in which she always came out the victor. But he stays quiet, calmly reaches over to a shelf in her closet, takes her shoes, the same ones she's probably worn on all her outings with her girlfriends, places them on top of her things. Amanda squints a little. There's a click of lightning. The sound comes out clearly, sharply. In the air, it sounds like a hammer blow, like a point in a sentence, like a final chord. And now she is no longer smirking. Her hands are clenched, but she doesn't cross them again. She stands slightly tense, her shoulders no longer as relaxed as before. Now it's not just words, not a threat, not an act. It's reality. She's losing control. And for the first time in her life, she feels that Nick really isn't afraid of her. "You're acting like a child. You think that makes you stronger?" Amanda crossed her arms, but stood tense, as if ready to lash out. Her voice sounded cold, but Nick could hear the nervousness breaking through behind that icy shell. She'd expected a scream, expected him to snap, to raise his voice, to want to prove something to her. She expected him to get angry. Then she could have seized on it, turned the conversation to her advantage, turned his reaction into proof of his weakness. But he wasn't going to play her game. "No," he said calmly. That makes me free." His voice was steady, confident, without a drop of emotion. He didn't look down at her as he had done before when he tried to convince her, pleaded with her, tried to hold her back. And he didn't look down at her, didn't try to humiliate her. He just looked at her straight on, like a man who no longer held any of his strings. Her fingers clenched. He noticed how white her knuckles turned. She was nervous now. Amanda was used to him always being the one to swallow everything, the one to smooth things over, the one to compromise for peace. She was used to the fact that he would hold the situation together because he treasured her, because he was afraid of losing her. But he was different now, and she could feel it. She subtly pitched forward, as if trying to examine his usual reactions in him, to find a loophole through which to break through. But there was no loophole. Nick stood in front of her, calm, collected, ready. And for the first time in a long time, he wasn't afraid. Amanda takes a step forward, cautiously, as if tasting the ground beneath her feet. She no longer smirks, no longer crosses her arms in a demonstrative gesture of detachment. Now she chooses a different approach, one that has worked before. Her voice becomes quieter, softer, almost intimate. She tilts her head slightly to the side, letting her hair fall freely over her shoulder, and her eyes look different now. There is no more mockery in them, no longer the coldness of before. They become deep, filled with something elusive, almost ghostly. "You know you're going to regret this," she says, and her voice is not a threat. It sounds as if they've already been through this argument, and she's simply stating the inevitable. She comes even closer, almost right up close. He can feel her breath, smell the faint scent of perfume, familiar to the point of pain. How many times has he drowned in that scent? How many times has this closeness made him forget everything? "Give me a reason to stay," she whispers, lightly touching his hand with her fingertips. Her movement is light, barely perceptible, almost casual. She's playing on delicate strings, the very ones that once made him fight for her over and over again. She knows how to wield that weapon, but it won't work tonight. Nick looks straight into her eyes, calmly, way down. His heart beats steady, and he says one word, "No." Time stands still. It breaks her more than a scream. She pulls back sharply, as if he's hit her. With a sudden movement, she withdraws her hand, as if she herself is surprised at what she has done. Her face changes. She is no longer acting. This is really real now. Nick takes the suitcase by the handle and rolls it out into the hallway. The wheels roll quietly on the wooden floor. The sound is almost indistinguishable, but in this tense silence, it seems deafening. He feels her gaze on his back, but doesn't turn around. Not now, he doesn't. He stops at the door, grabs the handle, turns it slowly. The door is ajar, and a rush of cold air rushes in from outside. The night is dark, the street is empty. Only the occasional lights in the distance are a reminder of life. The wind blows through the house, chilling her skin, ruffling the thin curtains. The smell of damp, freshness, and street coolness mingles with the warmth of the house, but now the two worlds are separate. Amanda stands behind him, motionless. She doesn't take a step forward or back, just stares. He turns toward her. She no longer puts on an icy calm. She's not smirking, no longer sarcastic. There's something different about her face now. Her lips are trembling slightly. She wants to say something, but she's silent. She wants him to stop her, wants him to change his mind, to tell her that this is all just a silly emotion, that it can all be taken back. But he doesn't. Nick looks straight into her eyes, and in that moment she realizes he won't back down. This is her moment, her choice, and now she has to make it. Amanda slowly reaches for the suitcase. Her fingers touch the handle, but don't grip it immediately. They remain on the surface, tense, as if she is assessing the weight, not so much of the suitcase itself, but of her decision. Nick stands motionless. He doesn't take a step forward, doesn't give in to the urge to say anything more. He's already said enough. Amanda inhales deeply, and in that inhale you can hear the struggle. She tightens her fingers around the handle of the suitcase, her knuckles turning white. She lifts her head and looks directly at him. "If I come out, will that mean the end?" Her voice is almost even, but there's a subtle tremor in it. Nick doesn't blink. Yes. That's it. The end. Silence. Her gaze lingers on him longer than it should. She searches his eyes for something that isn't there anymore. The last hope. The slightest hint of doubt, of weakness, of a desire to stop her. But it's empty. She can't accept that. Amanda presses her lips together, lowers her eyes to the suitcase. One more breath. Finally, she takes a step. Her heels tap softly on the threshold. The air outside is colder than it seemed. She takes her time. Her back is straight, her movements precise, but Nick can see it's not confidence. It's defense. She doesn't turn toward him, doesn't try to catch his eye at the last moment. Just walks forward. The door closes behind her. The click of the lock. And that's it. The house becomes quiet. But that silence doesn't weigh on his chest. Nick doesn't feel like a loser. He just doesn't play anymore. It's been a week. At first she didn't call. At first there was a complete vacuum. And Nick almost believed it was really over. She left and that was it. Done. Finished. But then, the first time her name appeared on his phone screen was 3 days after the door closed behind her. Missed call, Amanda. He stared at the screen. Didn't reset. Didn't answer. Just stared until the phone stopped vibrating. Then another one. And another. When he didn't answer, she texted. Can we talk? A simple message. No emotion. No explanation. As if they'd just accidentally lost each other in a crowd, and now she wanted to find him. Nick didn't reply. A couple hours later, a second message. Let's meet up. I just want to talk. This time, he didn't even bother to read it all the way through. Just turned off the screen and put the phone away. But she didn't stop. A day later, he woke up to a call at 2 in the morning. The phone was glowing with her name. She was still trying. He imagined her sitting in her new apartment or hotel or friend's place. He honestly didn't care, dialing his number, hoping the silence of the night would make him more vulnerable. Maybe she imagined him lying in bed thinking about her. How he waited, hoped. But he wasn't waiting. And he certainly wasn't hoping. The phone went silent. Then it rang again. And again. This time he took it in his hand, scrolled down, and found the option he wanted. Block the number? He didn't hesitate. Just pressed yes. The next day, she had the good sense to call from a different number. Again, silence in response. Then she wrote, "Did you really give up on me that easily?" He grinned, but didn't even bother to open the message. A couple days later, she tried again. "I just want to see you, to talk to you. At least give me a chance." A chance? She had a chance. Not just one. Thousands of chances. All those nights she'd made choices not in his favor. She made her choice then, and he was making his now. Nick picked up the phone and dialed his operator's number. "I need a new number." The operator clarified a couple of formalities, and in a few minutes it was ready. The old number was erased from reality, vanished along with everything that connected him to the past. He looked at the phone, then exhaled. Deep. Freely. For real this time. And that's where today's story ends. Thank you for watching to the end. If you enjoyed it, don't forget to like and comment. We'd love to discuss this story with you. See you in the next video.